with that. Welcome, welcome, Alex. Today, what you're witnessing is our warm start. So
Mm,
we learned. I'm the last to learn this. That instead of having some crusty old professor introduce the day with slides and everything, we get more going if we have fun for a few minutes before we have to
mm.
start. So here we
I
are.
can definitely appreciate that. Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So Alex works in the business school in the social innovation and entrepreneurial um, zone, and I have lots of questions about those things. And this is a chance for all of us to ask questions. So pretty free for all. We have some ideas, but I think you would do a better job of introducing yourself than I do. Would you mind telling us a little bit about how you ended up where you are?
Yeah, so right now I have two roles. One role is in the School of Business. I'm a program manager for this program called Ascend that we're trying to start, which is basically, Ascend has started. It's funded by JP Morgan Chase, and they want to help underrepresented entrepreneurs to scale and grow their businesses. So we've been in the process of trying to see if we can implement this program in Portland. It's already in several other cities. So we've been in the planning phase of this program, but that's very exciting. I graduated from the School of Business as an MBA in 2016. So I've been very connected to the PSU School of Business community ever since then. And I also am one of the co-founders of a business called Good Intent, and we
Mhm.
sell low waste lifestyle supplies. You can find us at shop with goodintent.com. And yeah, so I do both of those. I work, half and half time on my own business and half time at PSU in the School of Business. So I'm both roles.
So this is called Invention Boot Camp. We're going through processes to cultivate the inventive mind, but also the process. Could you tell us what social innovation is? What is that word? What does that mean? How does that relate to invention or innovation?
Right. So social innovation is really coming up with solutions for social problems. And and there's an endless amount of like problems that we, have in our society. So a social innovator is somebody who looks for a solution to those problems and tries to create a new solution to them and implement it. And that can be in a variety of forms. I was also in the Social Innovation Entrepreneurship Certificate Program, and a big part of that program is figuring out business solutions to social problems. So how can you form a nonprofit or a business that is mission driven and that solves a problem and also earns revenue at the same time?
So the role of profit, or that word of the outcome, has more complex meanings in this world, in social innovation.
Yeah, I think we kind of a lot of people have assumed that, if you have some kind of a social mission, that you can't also earn revenue, you can't also make money. And so that's kind of been a model of nonprofit for a long time. Is, if we want to create some kind of a social good, then we need donations and we need to ask for charity. But there's a lot of interesting business models that allow you to have create some kind of a social benefit while also earning revenue. Like one really famous example is like Tom's shoes, right? Tom's has a one for one business model where they for every pair of shoes that they sell, they also donate one to a person in need. So they're able to still sell shoes at a reasonable rate, but also give as well. So that's just one of many models. And there's a lot of really interesting models that allow people to use business as a force for good. So that was definitely an inspiration. That Tom's is one of many social enterprises that uses business as a force for good, and that was one of the many that was an inspiration to me in starting my business as well.
Mhm. Well, so tell us about your business. You started this with a friend not so long ago. Was that like did you have a dream a long time ago? I mean, how did that emerge? How'd that process?
It's very interesting. I mean, I've known since I started the MBA program that I wanted to start a business, but it was definitely something that came to me as a surprise because growing up, actually, my parents, my mom, my stepdad, my dad have all been or are business owners, and that was never something that I sought out for myself necessarily. but I did know that I wanted to have a career that had some kind of a positive social impact. And so, like I said, I was kind of inspired by a lot of businesses that were using business as a force for good. And I actually used to really see business as being like, you know, not, I shouldn't say like the enemy, but I thought of business as being something that was purely driven by like trying to make money. Like it was only about money and profit. And so I never really saw my goals of having a positive social impact aligned with business. But then I decided to go into the MBA program and do the social innovation entrepreneurship certificate. And I've had many, you know, different business ideas along the way that were all, you know, had various social missions. And good intent came along because a friend of mine, Lindsay, we used to just, you know, talk a lot about different companies that we were interested in. We both were really interested in, you know, other social enterprises, especially clean beauty and sustainable fashion. And we were becoming more and more aware of all of these problems surrounding the amount of waste that we produce on an individual and on like a global level. And really this business came out of a frustration of like waiting for somebody else to solve these problems, right? Climate change, for example, it's really important to vote for politicians that are going to vote and advocate on behalf of the climate crisis. But in the meantime, there's so much we can do on an individual level, and we kind of saw other examples of how this was being done. There were so many interesting products and interesting innovations that were creating sustainable alternatives to things that we use every day. And she and I spent a lot of time trying to find these other alternatives, and it was really exciting to us. But we thought, you know, most people don't know about all these things, and we wanted to make it much easier to access those alternatives and make it easier for people to understand how to implement them into their daily lives, and for it not to be like an elitist thing that, you know, to prioritize sustainability in the products you buy every day or in your lifestyle. It does not have to be an elitist thing. It can be something that is very accessible to everyone. So that has been a big part of our mission, is like, how can we educate, inform people, and also share like resources and alternatives to people that make it easier for them to make those transitions, because we really see that individual incremental actions have a big impact, especially when we do it collectively. So the more of us that can kind of start making like little swaps and things, it can really make a big difference. So that was really the mission. And we just launched our business last August. So we're not even a year old, but we have an online store, and we've also had a pop-up, like a long-term pop-up at Lloyd Center since December, and we closed due to COVID. But yeah, it's been really great actually to see kind of the positive reception and how this has developed over this amount of time, because a lot of these, the things that we're selling are actually really practical items that are essentials, and people are kind of realizing that they're really practical and helpful right now.
Got a question from Sydney. What are some of the things that your store carries?
Yeah, great question. I mean, so we sell a lot of home goods and personal care products. We say that we have sustainable alternatives to everyday essentials. So everything from like toothpaste and toothbrushes and shampoo and lotion, all those personal care products, to dish soap and cleaning products. And we even have like, you know, hair brushes and dish brushes and all kinds of things that you would use around the house. So a lot of them are reusable alternatives to a disposable item. Like, for example, reusable utensils or reusable straws or something that you would use instead of single-use plastics. We also carry a lot of like biodegradable alternatives to plastic items, like, for example, a bamboo toothbrush. There's kind of a wide variety of things like kind of all around your home. Like really we are trying to find alternatives. Anything that you see around your house that's plastic, we want to find a better alternative for. So we actually just started carrying like waste baskets and counter caddies and little things that, you know, kind of just replace those non-biodegradable plastics. And we also carry a lot of like things to help that help kind of promote minimizing food waste too. For example, we have food huggers that you can use instead of like saran wrap, or beeswax wraps that you can use instead of plastic saran wrap, that are reusable alternatives to help minimize food waste. There's really kind of a wide variety here. I'll share the website. You guys are welcome to check it out while we're in here, but there's kind of a wide variety, and we've been expanding more and more as well.
That's great. I really love that expression. We were tired of waiting for someone else to solve the problem. It's like a great attitude. It's a great attitude. So to tie it a little bit to where we are, we're in our 4-week camp. We're starting this serious process of generating and evaluating ideas that we want to choose to innovate with. So you were with your friend, you had this experience of, we found these things, we'd like to make it easier for other people to share. Were there some decision-making processes about how you, I mean, because there's probably many ways of doing that. Was one, was it like a organized process? And two, was it difficult? And would you have any advice for us as we're evaluating ideas and thinking through?
Yeah, so we did kind of, we thought through a few different business models. One of the things we thought about doing is just kind of having, being like a directory for different businesses. And that's something we looked into as well. And for us, something that we were seeing is that, you know, there were all these different items that were available online, but it was really hard to find all of them. So we wanted to basically be like the one-stop shop, and make it really easy for people to not have to do much of their own digging and work themselves. Something else we really wanted to prioritize, you know, when we saw there are a couple other shops that are similar to ours online, but something we wanted to prioritize was our sourcing. So we wanted to prioritize sourcing from vendors who were based in the US, and specifically based on the West Coast. My business partner, Lindsay, lives in San Diego, so we try to keep it as local as possible to kind of reinvest in our communities and support local communities, but also to minimize the carbon emissions from shipping. Sometimes, you know, we pick up our inventory from vendors that are literally in Portland that I just drive to Selwood to pick them up, or to Lake Oswego or something, or we, Lindsay in San Diego will pick up items in San Diego without having to get them shipped. So we try to incorporate a lot of other things into our mission. And we basically just saw that there was a gap between what was being already offered and what we could offer. We also really wanted to emphasize that this is a lifestyle that can be for anyone. I think there's another, actually I don't want to name a specific brand, but there's other influencers in this space that kind of make people feel bad for not being perfect at this, for, you know, for if any waste that people do kind of collect, they kind of shame them for it. And we want it to be a guilt-free space. And we wanted to create this really positive platform where people could feel like it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to be just working on it. It's like progress over perfection. So we kind of felt like we had something to say that we wanted to share. And we also wanted to, we really just want to be like a hub for all things sustainable. So, so that's kind of been our mission, and we didn't see anyone that was doing that really perfectly. So that's kind of how we came to this. And we have other things we want to incorporate at some point too. We'd like to offer consulting, because we, you know, something that we see too, you know, I'm actually just talking to family members, they, you know, a lot of people have really good intentions. They would really like to adopt more sustainable habits, but they just don't really know where to start or how it applies to their lifestyle. Maybe they have kids and they feel like it's not really feasible for them to use reusable everything. So, you know, I think an opportunity too is to like work with people on an individual level and help them figure out ways that they can incorporate better habits little by little into their lifestyle. So there's a lot of different angles to attack the same problem, but really we want to empower people and give them agency to deal with these issues on an individual level. And that's our ultimate mission.
And got a question from B. How has your business changed with the pandemic, and how, you know, the way that people have shopped and how you operate?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and we weren't really sure how it was going to go. like I said, we did have to close our Lloyd Center space for the time being, and we had just opened it for a few months, and that was definitely a major revenue stream for us. But something that we've actually seen, although our sales went down a little bit resulting from that initially, we actually saw an increase in online sales, partially because our primary channel is e-commerce and people were doing more online shopping. And especially, in the beginning of this pandemic and people were scrambling in the grocery stores and everything was out, I think people were seeing like, oh, if I could, order my laundry detergent online, then that would be more convenient to me. Or if I could get a reusable alternative to plastic baggies, then I wouldn't have to keep going to the grocery store for this and that. So we've actually seen an increase in the last few months, and actually especially just this past month, especially with everything that's been happening with Black Lives Matter, because we are a Black-owned business. We've also seen an amazing show of support in the last month or so. So it is interesting. Another thing that we have been trying to be very mindful of is, because we are a low waste shop, a lot of our customers are, they would like to avoid shipping if possible. A lot of our local Portland customers really appreciated having a brick and mortar space, and there's not really another shop like ours available in Portland. So a lot of people really appreciated that. So something that I've been doing is offering local delivery in Portland, so to minimize the packaging and carbon emission waste from shipping. And so ultimately we do want to having a brick and mortar space is actually important to us, even though that's, a lot of people could argue that brick and mortar is not right for every business at this time. I think for us, our customer base really values that because it does minimize waste in the end. So that's something that we've had to compromise recently, but we're trying to kind of figure out ways to be flexible. And even Lindsay also offers delivery sometimes, or pickup. So that's something we're going to try to offer more, is curbside pickup, that kind of thing. So people have that option.
I've got a question from Whitman. In marketing these types of products, the branding appears to be somewhat luxurious, so the costs associated with ethical sourcing and manufacturers justifies the markup, right? So you're trying to do the right thing, but the additional cost also means that the market may focus on luxury brands, or it may appear to. How do you move towards with these? How do you work with these costs so that the wider market as a society would be either feasibly able to afford it, but also attracted to it? I mean, how do you walk that line or that edge?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something I've been thinking about a lot lately. I think there's actually a bit of a misconception. I think that there's two things that are true. One is that you're right, like, with more ethical and local and sustainable manufacturing and labor, a lot of the times these products do tend to be more expensive, but that's actually not always the case. And a lot of times it's much less, the markup is much less than people would expect. I think more and more too, it was more so at the beginning of this movement because there were fewer options and the supply chains were less developed. These items were a lot more expensive. Now we're seeing increasingly more and more competition, and a lot of these products are not as expensive as they used to be. At the same time, some of them are, like, for example, a bamboo toothbrush is $6, which is probably more expensive. Well, some of the ones that we sell are $6, which can be more expensive than a plastic toothbrush. So sometimes there is a definite markup there, and so that's like a cost differentiation people have to make. But a lot of the times what it really is an upfront cost for overall a decrease in cost. So for example, a lot of reusable alternatives to disposables. What's an example? Like just a reusable water bottle, for example. If you buy a reusable water bottle, it might be $25, and that's an higher upfront cost, but it'll save money over time if you're not buying disposables. So this is something that we are actually going to just launch, I think tomorrow, is a campaign that kind of compares those costs and helps communicate that. A lot of these things really do save money over time. And so we want to help communicate that more. And really, sometimes it's a matter of choosing like what things are right for you. So it might be choosing those items that do save money over time versus the ones that might be more expensive because they use organic ingredients or something. So there's kind of something for everyone. Something we also try to promote is DIYing. Just making your own personal care products and cleaning products is often relatively inexpensive in comparison to buying something that's pre-made. So we share a lot of DIY recipes, and we also carry DIY like containers that you can use to make your own DIY creations. Like in those, the containers themselves, we have some that are like $2.50 or $3 or something. And you know, it's a matter of mixing baking soda and coconut oil and really basic ingredients that people have at home. So something that we try to do is instead of just sharing products that you can buy from us, it's also alternatives that can save money as well. That's kind of something that we do as a business. Like I would say on our social media, we try to share only maybe half of our content is about the products that we sell, and the rest of it we try to share other information about how to reduce waste that might not, you know, cost any money. A lot of it is things actually that our families have been doing, that we grew up seeing our parents and grandparents like kind of implementing these little habits and stuff that are low waste and they save money, and it's, you know, win-win. So there's really something that everyone can do that doesn't have to be an added cost. But I agree, there is kind of this perception that like people correlate sustainable products with more expensive products. And that's true sometimes, and it's not always true, and it's becoming less and less true.
Yeah,
Right, my great grandma still washes her tinfoil to reuse. Exactly, and actually, that's a great idea. People should reuse their tinfoil if they have it, and you recycle it once you do that. But yeah, there's so many things that our families that, you know, I grew up seeing my grandparents do that I realized in hindsight, oh, that wasn't just to save money, that was also a sustainable decision.
Yeah, I have a little pet thing about things like reusing aluminum foil. If you use a piece of aluminum foil twice, you've cut your consumption in half. If you use it 3 times, you've cut it to 1/3, 1/4, one. So it's a 1/x. So I'm a do the math nerd thing here. So it's a 1/x thing. So the biggest gains are in the first few times you've reused it. And then 1/x goes to 0. So if you use it infinity number of times, it's, you know, the savings of the last few don't matter so much, but you can make an incremental improvement. Right. Sorry, math nerd. I'm thinking about, I'm interested in some of your personal growth and think about education and some of the other kinds of lessons that might be of interest to the campers here. So how would you say, I mean, this is an amazing story you've got, and sometimes I think we can see someone with your success and achievement and like go, whoa, wow, how could I do something like that? So I'm curious if you have some like view of how you've changed since you were in high school, and how you grew into the woman you are now, the business owner, the entrepreneur. And so if you want to comment about how you've changed, but also related to that, has there been some things that have been like instigators of that change, sources of that change? Maybe things, so there's things inside you and things outside you. I'm curious about how you ended up here.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, to start off with, I'll say I'm still growing and figuring it out, right? I'm 30 now, and so, you know, when I was in high school, I think one of the biggest changes is now I know what I want to do, which is quite a blessing. I know a lot of people my age and older that haven't figured that out. And when I was in high school, I had very little idea. I knew actually that I really enjoyed writing. And when I was going to college, I decided to be a communication studies major at first because I thought maybe I could be a journalist. And then I switched majors and did film and TV production. And then I switched majors again, was a screenwriting major, and ended up being a theology minor. And and really throughout my adulthood, I've wanted to be many, many different things. I wanted to be a yoga teacher and a drama teacher and a florist. There's so many things I've thought about doing, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I have a lot of ideas. That's why a lot of my friends and family.
A good problem to have.
Yes, and so it's kind of, you know, something I've been talking to some of my friends that are having a hard time deciding, you know, what career path to choose next is, you know, there's no wrong decision. And that kind of realizing that gave me a lot of freedom, because it's really a matter of choosing something. And for me, I have been very fortunate that I can tell when something is going to be a good decision. I get, when I decided to move to Portland, I moved to Portland in 2013. And I just knew I wanted to go. I actually had never been to Portland before I moved here. And, but I just had this really good feeling about it. And I kind of did my research, and it worked out really well. But it's kind of a matter of like for me, it's been a matter of like knowing what I want and following my instinct, and then following through on it. The same thing happened when I decided to go to grad school. I mean, it wasn't necessarily the most conventional choice at that point. Probably a lot of people would have thought, like, why is she getting her MBA right now? This is not, it didn't seem like the most common sense path for me, like having been a screenwriting major. And, after college, I did a variety. I worked a lot of seasonal jobs. I worked at a summer camp. I worked as a ski instructor at a ski resort. And like I said, I wanted to be a drama teacher. I mean, it's a very non-linear path that I took to getting here, but ultimately I just chose one. I was excited about something. I decided I wanted to start a business, and I wanted to, I wanted to have the skills and credibility to build something that would be really meaningful and impactful. And I went with it. And just kind of knowing what you want and being able to follow that is really hard, I think. So that's something I think I have a lot more clarity around those things now. Whereas when I was younger, I kind of thought that there was going to be this like dream job that I was going to there was going to be clear that there was this one thing that I should do that was like destined for me. And I don't think that anybody has one specific thing that they should do, but ultimately, if you're excited about something, I think that that's something you can pursue. And I've also learned is that you still don't have to do just one thing. I still really love writing, and I've been able to write a lot through my business. I write blog posts every other week. And Lindsay writes blog posts too. And that's been something, and just even actually on social media, I've been realizing like how much my business has given me a platform to write and communicate with people. And so that's been really powerful. And I never would have thought being a business owner is a way that I'll be able to have that platform and use that passion, but it has been. And, I've never been I used to be somebody that wanted to have like a 5-year plan and know exactly where I was going. And I've just learned that that doesn't work for me personally. What works for me is listening to myself and pursuing, like just going with what I want to do and following through with it. But that's a lot easier said than done for some people. But that is what has worked really well for me.
So you come across then as someone who's unafraid to take that chance, right? And so perhaps relating it or not to as we grow and become independent, as leaving high school, our parents' house or whatever, we have to put ourselves in new situations where we don't know things. So do you have any advice or maybe just a story about how you put yourself in an environment where you don't know other people and you start building that network? I mean, you do that in business, right? You do that when you came to Portland. You do that when you go to college for the first time. So how have you navigated that situation?
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of examples of that I can think of in my mind. I'm actually, I would say I'm somebody that's not great at building. I wouldn't consider myself to be somebody who's great at like building that initial network, but what has been really helpful for me many times in college, for me, was being in a program called TLC that was like for incoming Black freshmen. And that's how I made a lot of my friends. It's being like tethered to a certain group that you have a really valuable experience with. And so that has been really helpful to me. Like when I did that going into college, actually in Portland, it was very difficult for me because I moved here with my now husband and a friend of mine, and we didn't really know anyone else here. And that was nice to have, but it took a long time to develop a network. And what really helped actually was going to PSU. And my husband also went to PSU, and he got his master's in education. But it was really like those groups that I was able to make not only friendships, but also like a professional network that has been really helpful. Actually, something that I never would have imagined being really helpful to me as well was one of my jobs was at Chinook Book. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with it, but it's a coupon book, an app that promotes local sustainable businesses, and it's based in Portland. It's in other cities too, but I worked there for a while as an ad sales manager. And basically what that job was connecting with business owners all over the city and, trying to get them into Chinook Book. But that was like an amazing way to build my network that I never would. Sales is also not something that I ever saw myself doing, but it was really fun. And I made really genuine connections with people all over the city. And I, even though that's not something I would have imagined myself doing, it was invaluable. And I just think that, one of the pieces of advice I would give is, think about the ways that different jobs and opportunities can really, lend that kind of value and really take advantage of those opportunities when you're in them. I think something that I underestimated a lot when I was in high school and college is the value of a network. I used to hate that term networking because it seemed really contrived. Okay, you go to an event and you're supposed to like chit chat with people you don't know, but really I think the best networking opportunities are when you're in a class or a group like this or any other, and you're like making genuine connections and you maintain those, because that has paid off for me so many times over the years. And it's been very surprising what, how the network has paid off and where that has come from.
Mm-hmm. I have a question from B here. I see on your website that you don't seem to have ads besides some for sustainability. How does that affect your profit, or how do you think it affects your image, having ads or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually don't think that we ever really considered having ads on our website. Our primary revenue stream is through selling our products. And I think that ultimately it has been helpful to us, because I think actually the polish of our brand is part of what, even though we're a really young company, I think that's something that has paid off a lot. And actually from even before we launched, like I said, last August, it might've been close to a year, maybe like 9 months before we launched the brand, we had already started blogging. We had a WordPress website at the time that we were doing, I think, weekly blogs. And we had a social media presence, and we're providing a lot of content. And my business partner, Lindsay, this has been very helpful, that she is a very creative and talented artist, and she does all of our graphics and design herself. And I think that that's been part of our brand, is that we put out we put out a lot of original content that does tend to have kind of a polish to it. And I think that has legitimized us and made people, I've heard many times in the early, months of our business, that like people assume that we've been around a lot longer. Mm-hmm. And so I think things like that make a difference in the way that people see you. Mm-hmm. And also I think something that we try to clarify, and if we don't say this explicitly, but we don't want our customers or our audience to feel like we're trying to like squeeze money out of them with everything we do. So I think that ads kind of have that kind of give you that impression sometimes, that like what you're doing on this website right now is making somebody money. So I think that there's something to be said for not doing something like that. But I also think that there's a way to do it. We also haven't done any like any paid partnerships with influencers or anything where, we have them promote our products, and we have had those opportunities, but it's been really important for us that everything be very organic. And we've had other influencers that have, promoted our products just because they liked our products. And so I think that those kind of things pay off in the long term based on how people see you and how credible you seem to them.
I've got a question from Kyle. When networking, how would you connect with someone new? Like, what questions would you ask? What would you say to that new person about yourself? How long you should keep the conversation going?
Yes, I'm trying to think of some examples. Actually, one of my favorite events, if anybody can get to this event whenever it happens in real life next time, there's this event called, it's for local B Corps, and B Corps are, it's a third party certification that businesses get to basically say they're a mission driven business that meets all these requirements. But they have this annual event, I think it's called the B Bash, and you can go to it even if you're not a B Corp. But something that they do really well is they have lots of like icebreakers and things to help you meet people. And it's something that if anybody ever gets to coordinate a networking event, something they do really well is that everyone wears name tags with just their first name on it. And they basically prompt you to go up to different people and ask questions. I don't know if you guys have done these icebreaker games where you have to fill out like a bingo chart or something like that. And I've actually felt a lot of success when I went up to people and just started chatting with them, not knowing what they did. Like I've walked up to CEOs of companies that I would have probably been intimidated to approach before, and just asked. To me, it's like really important to like talk to people on just like a human level, just chit-chatting by the hors d'oeuvres or whatever, and asking how they're doing, and or making a comment on the food or something like that, and having kind of a genuine connection first. That's not about like, what do you do and what can I get from you? But as soon as you start having having like those kind of seemingly like benign conversations, then you can ask what they do and stuff, and just like show interest in what people are doing, like asking questions about what they do or where they're from, or why they came to this event, and those kind of things can be really helpful and interesting. And I think something you don't realize is that people want to be approached a lot of time, especially if you see someone like alone at a networking event. People want someone to come up to them. People want to be asked questions, and that goes for, I think, anyone, not just I don't think that is distinguished by a certain type of job or anything. I've definitely seen CEOs walking around networking events like twiddling their thumbs because they feel awkward too. So I think just assuming that everybody is just a person, names and titles and who does what, doesn't matter as much as you would think it would.
Here's a question. How do you, from Bridget V, how do you have low prices? Because when you go to other stores, these kinds of products are way more expensive.
Well, part of that is we just compare. I think something I've noticed from some other shops is it seems like they have just gone with whatever the vendor that is like the most popular is or something. But we really do a lot of research with each product that we carry and try to see what all of the alternatives are, as many of them as possible, and really compare based on a variety of factors. And price is definitely one of them, because that's part of our mission to make these changes more accessible. So like for example, we sell safety razors that are like stainless steel reusable razors. And there's several different options on the market. There's one that's called Rockwell that's based in Canada. That's a really good brand, and they are priced kind of mid-range. There's really just like several others. There's some that are higher end, and for us, we found one that was based in California, and it was like $26 when some of them are like in the 60s and stuff. And I think that sometimes other brands want to go with the brands that seem to have more brand visibility or clout. And to us, that was not the number one priority. It was like, what is a good product for a reasonable price, and like, where is it made? We wanted to support those independent brands as much as possible. So sometimes you can find the lower prices actually from more independent brands that are innovating and coming up with better ways to make their products. So I guess the short answer to the question is we do a lot of research, and we compare products, and we search all over the place. So that's probably one of our core competencies is finding really good products that are at good prices. And it's easier for some products than others. Some of them there's like very few alternatives, so that's what you go with.
B, I see you have your hand raised on the did we get that question answered? Yeah, okay. Crazy question. I suppose I'm an inventor. I'm someone who has this new product. Maybe it's not an exact fit to your company, but I'm curious. I'm at a party and I'm like, oh, I want to tell somebody about my invention. Do you have, I mean, back to your advice about networking and chit chat and approaching someone as a person. Um, how likely is it that somebody just coming up with an idea could connect with a business, or how would you frame that opportunity as something to how to pursue it, but also how does that happen in the real world? I've got some new gadget, some new.
Right. I mean, so I'll just say that one thing I don't know very much about is the actual manufacturing process. That has actually always been very intimidating to me, is once you have an idea for a product, how does it get made? You guys might know more about that than I do.
Mhm.
But what I can tell you is once you have a product, and some, I should say not manufacturing is not always that complicated. Like we have some vendors. One of my favorites is Kamamu Soaps. They're based in Selwood, and they make soaps and shampoo and conditioner bars that are great. And their manufacturing is they make soap in their little studio. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but it's partially a matter of getting licensed and set up and stuff. But for us, it happens both ways, where sometimes the wholesaler, the manufacturer of the product, will reach out to us and say like, hey, I think that my brand aligns with yours. We'd love to be carried in your store. More often than not, we're reaching out to other brands. But it definitely happens both ways. And we are always looking for alternatives to great products. There's one actually I've been thinking about that I really want somebody to make, in case any of you is interested. What I really want is we sell floss that is biodegradable, because most floss is made from nylon. It's plastic, so it's not biodegradable. And I don't need to get into all the elements of why plastic is not desirable, but we found biodegradable bamboo floss, and there's also silk floss. But there's not a great alternative for the floss picks, which, like my husband, for example, hates using, just like the string floss. But that's one of those things that is like a convenience of a single-use plastic that it would be great to have an alternative for, so people don't feel like they have to compromise their preferences in order to floss.
So,
So
so,
there's, yeah.
so the world needs a floss pick that can have the floss replaced. Is that
Yes,
what you're
that
saying?
that would be ideal. I would love that. Yeah, if you can like put in a new string of floss each time, but the actual pick itself was reusable, that would be great. If anybody comes up with that, you're welcome to reach out to me, because I'm looking
I
for
think
it.
Madison's on it here. Madison's
I would
she's
love
got
that.
busy.
But actually, something that's been really amazing is how often, like, there are so many like rapidly happening innovations. Just 5 years ago, so many of the products that we carry didn't exist at all, or people thought it couldn't be done. People thought shampoo bars were only going to be terrible for your hair, and I'm saying that because I personally never thought that I, with this curly hair, could ever use a shampoo or conditioner bar. But people are innovating and making these products better and better and cheaper, and they're still sourcing them ethically and sustainably. And so that's what's really exciting, is that this is a really like ripe space for innovation, and there's so many other things that we can create that kind of solve a lot of these problems. I mean, all of you, I encourage you to just look around your homes, or like think about the things that you do every day and how they can be done more sustainably, how they can be manufactured or produced or sourced more sustainably, how the end of life can be better than just sitting in a landfill and never really biodegrading. So how do shampoo bars work? I'm seeing these questions. I can answer that really quick. Shampoo bars are basically just like, they look like a bar of soap, and when you wet your hair in the shower, you just rub them directly on your hair. And it's just as easy as that. And the conditioner bars are the same, except it's conditioner.
So you
But
don't need, it doesn't need a plastic bottle.
exactly, they don't need a plastic bottle. A lot of them will come in like little paper sleeves or something, but
Mm-hmm.
the plastic bottle is a big part of it that we're avoiding. But also a lot of the liquid products, this is another thing. And a lot of products that usually come in liquid form, if you look at the ingredients, the number one ingredient is usually water. And so just them being in liquid form, it makes them heavier. So that increases the carbon emissions associated with shipping them all over the place. And it makes it so that they have to add preservatives and stuff to the products. It just is, and it's kind of a waste. It's a waste of your money, really. Most of what you're paying for is water. So there's a lot of solid versions of things. Like we sell shampoo and conditioner bars. We also sell like a dishwashing block. That's a solid form of dish soap. We also sell a dissolvable laundry paste that turns into liquid laundry detergent, and hand soap paste. And we have face soap that's in bar form and in powder form. There's like all these really cool innovations that people have come up with as an alternative to those liquid products, so you can avoid the bottle and the water. Yeah, they're great, and they work well.
Great. I'm going to keep taking questions from the audience, but I also know that we've taken a whole bunch of your time, and I want to appreciate sharing that with us. Biggest sort of big picture. Here we are at an amazing time in history, scary and upsetting. And so you've crossed over to this world of being a successful business person. Do you have any encouragement or advice for folks who are just getting started, like high school? And we talked a little bit about that before, but I'm thinking more about this moment, 2020. Here we are.
Well, as as crazy as 2020 is, I actually do see it as, it's actually, it's oddly refreshing to me a little bit, because I do see that I think we are actively reassessing things. We're kind of challenging like what has been our normal, and rethinking what that should look like. And so even though it's painful, we're definitely in this like growing pain moment, I think moving forward, it just shows you that normal can be whatever we want it to look like. And I think especially for individual lives, actually one of like the best pieces of advice I got, actually like in a card for my college graduation, I think it was a Steve Jobs quote, but it was something like, don't let other people influence what you want to do with your life. Like you have to basically wake up every day and look in the mirror in the morning and live your life. So live it how you want to live it. And I think in terms of career, I always thought like your career had to look like one specific thing. It had to be a very straight and narrow path, but there is no wrong way to do your life. And so if there's something that excites you, if you feel like you have any kind of a passion and drive, like to do something, you can find a way to make that work. And, you need to pay your bills and stuff. And, that's part of what I'm doing right now. And a lot of business owners starting out, like we do have to work day jobs in addition to starting our businesses. So there's an element of practicality, but it can be done. And it doesn't have to look like just one thing. Being a business owner doesn't look like just one thing. My mom, growing up, she's always worked like 6 days a week running her business, and she loves it. That's not necessarily for me. I like, it's really important for me to have that balance, and I've been able to do that. And so it's really just a matter of knowing what you want and prioritizing those things and setting your intentions and goals and following through with it. Like we each have the power to manifest the lives that we want. So the hardest part is figuring out what you want. And so I think, being reflective about those things and really like noticing when you're like in those flow moments and you're like, I could do this all day. That is that is a sign that you should be taking note of when you're, doing something, or you have an idea that's exciting to you. Even if nobody else thinks it's that great of an idea, it doesn't mean you can't still do it. So I think if, people are having ideas or have like a vision for the future that they want to see, like this is the time to figure out how to make that happen. And yeah, I just think I'm actually really excited for what things are going to look like in the next 5-10 years. I would be willing to bet that things are going to be changing for the better in many ways.